Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to What You May Have Missed. And what you may have missed is plain to see on the screen, which is Warhammer Quest, Shadows over Hammerhal, the second Warhammer Quest within the Age of Sigmar universe. Now, locales such as this were briefly mentioned within the Chaos Battle Tome Disciples of Tzeentch, where the forces of Chaos battle Sigmar for control of a city. So, there is quite a bit of information that you can discover from a cover. Taking a look at the previous Warhammer Quest cover, we can see almost all of the antagonists bar 2, the Grot Scuttlings and the Skaven Death Runners. But we can see every single one of the heroes, even if they are not pictured prominently. Like, one of the ones that people had a bit of trouble finding was the guy in the back. Speaking of which, this time it's the antagonist. So a lot of people believe that this bloke right here is one of the Blood Reavers, and I'd have to agree with them. But after that, it becomes much more obvious what the characters are. And it looks to be that every single one of them is a reprint. So, who's up next? Who's up next is the Kadric Acolytes. We see right here that these are going to be the new reprinted Kadric Acolytes. The reason for that is pretty simple in my opinion. See this moon face right here? That is the same moon face that we see. So, it's highly unlikely that they're going to be the push fit guys, because that would be a little bit of creative advertising, shall we say. Next up, we've got the Plague Kings. Now, it could be a new unit, but I believe that most people are correct when they believe that these are the Plague Kings. So, as we can see, most of the foes are relatively recent prints, but when it comes to the characters, quite a lot of them are older. So let's start off with some of the less prominent characters. The first one is the Slaughter Priest. Now we see in the background here, that bloke right there. Now there are two Chaos guys, him and this bloke over here. And the reason why I believe them to be heroes is because it is in line with their design philosophy. The reason for this is that there is 6 heroes to choose from, and at least one of them needs to be a priest. The next guy up is the I do believe he's called the Lawkeeper or Lawweaver, which is one of the high elf guys in the background. After that, we have, the Black Ark or Black Fleet commander, which is right here. And the reason that we know this is because just over here, we can see his peg leg. And after that, we have a very, very older print. So this right here is the Dwarven Cogsmith, and we find him right here. Now, I was pretty surprised to see this guy, and the reason I was surprised to see this guy is because he is a considerably older model, but more than that, he is a much older design philosophy for the dwarves. So it might mean that the dwarves, or Duarden as they're called now, are going to be receiving a series of prints along those lines. There's been talk about the redesign of the elves in the similar fashion to the newer elves that we saw on the previous Silver Tower, but that hasn't eventuated yet. And the final guy is the most obvious, the Lord Celestin. So I believe that's got all of your miniatures covered, but I believe that the rules are going to be remaining largely the same. The reason for this, we already have all of the cards for these guys. Now, if we're going to see these guys continuing along these lines, I think that we're going to see Games Workshop wanting to keep the rules relatively the same, because the rules were very well received. The faux tables, the lack of a GM, that wasn't as well received, but the rules themselves were very well received. But there are some other things that I've been trying to glean from it. So, I went over the numbers, and this is just a rough estimate of cost, right? Now, keep in mind that originally I'm working with Australian prices, so these prices may sound somewhat ridiculous to your ear, but I'm used to it. It's the Australian tax. So, I calculated all the characters up, and it cost $204, and for the foes, it cost $274. Now, I believe that this is going to be costing somewhere along the lines of how Gorechild was costed. In other words, it will be discounted by 55%. And my reasoning behind this is because these are a lot older prints, and I believe that this is going to be their more standard Warhammer quest, because it'll be more introductory. So based off those numbers, I took a look at what it might cost in your guys' currencies. So for USD, if I just did a direct translation, it'd be 150. But taking a look at your guys' prices, what I calculated it at would be about 110. Now for the UK, I calculated it at the actual predicted price between somewhere 65 and 70 pounds. Now, of course, what we might see is something like the old Warhammer Quest, and we might not actually have full boxes of each. But the reason why I believe we'll have full boxes of each is because the current Warhammer Quest is, I believe, sitting at 51 models. Now, if we calculate all of the models that would be in this box, if they were the exact numbers of those boxes currently, it would be 52. So that sounds like pretty similar numbers to me, but just remember that they could have half of each of these kits, with the exception of the Blight Kings, and then include something else that we haven't seen on the box art. But there we go, guys. That's what you may have missed. Warhammer Quest Shadows over Hammerhal, and I hope that you have found that informative. Alright, see ya!